Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host, Keegan. And this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest, and that is Dr. Jeannie May. Did I say that right?
You did. You did.
Awesome. So, Dr. Jeannie May, what is it that you do? I see that you have a sign behind you that says TheBreathMD. That's
It absolutely. So I'm actually board certified in geriatrics, hospice, and addiction medicine. So
wow.
that's my full-time job. But several years ago, I got exposed to breathwork, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just mind-blowing. And since then, I've made a commitment that I want to get this out to the world. That this
Mm-hmm.
is so much more effective, gets to the root cause in a way that, all the medicines I prescribe every day just don't do.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. So, what exactly got you into breath work? Was it something that was just like you kind of noticed you had a little bit extra energy after taking a deep breath or something, or what was it?
No, actually, I've always suffered from anxiety. It's been
Mm,
something that I've dealt with actually since childhood.
mm-hmm.
And it had always been an issue. Something kind of quirky I like to do is on my birthday, I like to go learn something new. So
Ah,
several years ago for my birthday, I went to Phoenix, Arizona. I'd never been there before. Very nice. And I went to a breathwork training course, and I had no idea what it was. None
mm,
whatsoever. I mean, I was familiar with Dr. Andrew Weil and his insomnia technique. I
mm-hmm.
definitely had used that. Let's breathe in for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. And I thought it was going to be more stuff like that, where it's just kind
Mm-hmm.
of learning these techniques, and I figured it could help me with my anxiety, it could help my addiction patients with anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But what what it was a transformational somatic breathwork journeys, which
Oh
is
wow.
completely different. It was my first 90-minute session was like 5 years of talk therapy for me.
Wow.
It was mind blowing. It was because I had done decades, literally decades of talk therapy, which I'm not knocking talk therapy. I mean, I have many friends who are therapists. It's definitely a very important modality. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the deal was I understood intellectually what the issue was.
Mm-hmm.
Crappy stuff happened in my past, and it was now affecting my present. Yep,
Mm-hmm.
that's what was going on. I got it. But it was sort of thing that no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
make the feeling go away. There was still this feeling of unease, of something's quite not quite right. I'm just not safe, and I just couldn't get that feeling to go away.
Mm-hmm.
Then with this breath work, which it was just mind blowing. All these emotions just came up, and I felt them, and then they went out and released. And the most amazing thing for me was that I didn't even have to go there, right? I didn't have to go back to those past traumas. There's actually a thing in talk therapy, especially with disorders like post-traumatic stress. It actually can make it worse, where you keep going back to the traumatic event. With the breath work, you actually just let the emotions come up, out, and then release. You don't even necessarily have to go back and think about it and process it. You just let it go, and it lasts. That was the most
Huh.
amazing thing, is that and I've done hundreds of breathwork journeys since then, and healing's a journey. It doesn't happen all in one time, and then
Mm.
many layers of the onion. But I mean, it is the closest thing to a magic bullet I have ever found. It's amazing.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That is that is really cool. I'm an avid breathwork kind of person myself, so I can totally relate. But you've gone like 20 steps further than like just someone doing meditations here and there. So uh, the way that you describe this totally uh, just makes sense to me, and that's amazing that you can do this kind of thing. And a lot of people don't really recognize what breath does for us and
Yep.
how it's uh, one of those things that is just really interesting to me because there's a lot more that goes on with it. And like you, I also suffer with anxiety, and so I've tried things like meditation, medication, um, and that like they have their degrees of success, but I found that the meditation seems to last pretty well. But that's also in part because I'm using breath work with that.
Yep.
So it's not just like, oh, quiet the mind and we're good. It's like there's something going on with the body too.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's
Mm-hmm.
what you were saying with that somatic experience.
Yep,
Um,
exactly. Exactly. And I love meditation. Meditation's
mhm.
fantastic. In fact, my past birthday, I went to Joe Dispenza for the first time. And
Oh.
he is amazing. I cannot recommend highly enough. But I'd always kind of had a block about meditation because my,
Mhm.
my mind is always going 5 different directions all at once. Like I would sit
Mhm.
there and I would be meditating and I'm counting my breath. So one
Mhm.
one level of thought I'm counting. Then the next thought I'm hearing music. I'm hearing, all sorts. And then a third level, I'm still thinking.
Mhm.
It's like this isn't that. The cool thing with breath work is that
Mhm.
in the somatic transformational kind, which there are many, many different kinds, and they're all
Mhm.
valuable, but in this specific type of breathwork journey, um, you actually do really fast breathing where you're
Mhm.
exhaling, getting off excess CO2.
Ah.
Which is interesting. So what it actually does, and when you have decreased CO2 in the blood, it makes your vessels constrict.
Hmm.
And so it actually constricts the vessel temporarily. It's not like you're turning your brain off forever, but it turns off your monkey mind. It turns off that frontal lobe that keeps thinking, which for me was so difficult to do. Like no matter what I
Yeah.
tried to do, I could not, I just kept thinking on different, I would think about thinking. I mean, it was just, I could not
Mhm.
turn it off. But with breath work, it actually turns it off so you can get to that meditative state a lot easier than meditation. Not that I'm pro meditation, but
Mhm.
yeah, breath work was like a secret workaround that I could get to that state um, without trying to quiet my mind. I could focus on the breathing, and that
Mhm.
gave me but it's intense breathing.
Yeah, that and see that's really interesting that you brought that up because I've been having some blocks in meditation myself lately, and I've kind of been wondering like, what is that? Like, I know I've had this before, and it's kind of one of those cycles. But I was like, there's got to be like a workaround. It doesn't
There
have to just
is.
be something.
Yep.
And so, can you go into a little more detail of your breathing that you did? Because did you say it was aggressive breathing?
So, well, aggressive probably makes it. That's not a good term. You need to come up with better,
Like
better word.
forceful,
It's
maybe,
intensive.
but
It's intense. So,
intensive. Okay.
yeah, intensive. So, okay. So, all right. So, brief little science here, right? So, in our
Mm-hmm.
nervous system, we kind of have 2 main branches. Although
Mm-hmm.
actually one of the branches is into, but anyway, there's all explained in my book where I go into the science and the actual breath. But
Okay.
we have our sympathetic side, which is our fight or flight side. And then we have the
Mm-hmm.
parasympathetic side, which is our rest, digest, chill out side.
Mm-hmm.
And in modern society, most of us are hanging out all the time in the sympathetic, where
Mm-hmm.
we actually, there's a huge problem that we're hyperventilating, that we're all breathing too fast, shallow chest breathing, and our CO2 level is actually lower than it's supposed to be. Like our threshold for CO2 is actually lower than it's supposed to be, which causes all these chronic problems.
Huh.
Which is why it's interesting because, like lots of the ancient breathing techniques, they're all like, never breathe through the mouth, never breathe through the mouth. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Like we actually
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be breathing through our mouth in our normal daily life. Our,
Mm-hmm.
our nose actually produces nitric oxide, which is like a magical compound naturally in our body, but you only get it when you breathe through your nose.
Isn't that laughing gas?
Oh,
Or is
no.
that nitrous?
Yeah,
Nitrous oxide. Oh, so
it's close.
close.
It's close, but this is NO. Yeah. Nitric oxide.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and
Huh.
actually, they won a Nobel Prize for discovering it.
So that's so strange.
Yep, yep. So, lots of breathing techniques are focused on moving to the parasympathetic side.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a really cute, it's really short, it's like a 2-minute video where it's 90 seconds to calm, where breathing in this rate, like if you text breath to 26786, so that's breath to 26786. You can see this little 2-minute video where I'll breathe with you for 90 seconds, and that'll change your state from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic.
Huh.
And it's all about the ratio. So it's all,
Uh-huh.
everybody gets hung up on this number, that number, how many, I'm forgetting what number. Don't worry about it, right? As long as your inhale is shorter than your exhale, like you could just breathe in for 4 and then breathe out for twice as long for 8. Like as long as your exhale is longer, that is what is a message. It tells your heart to tell your brain, you're chill. It's good. You're safe. Everything is A-okay. You don't need to be freaked out right now. But most of us are not doing that. Our inhales are longer than our exhales, and we're just constantly in stress, constantly. Like it makes the anxiety worse by how we're breathing. So, but the somatic transformational actually on purpose does the sympathetic state in a controlled manner, breathing in and out through the mouth for 45 minutes, which people freak out and like, 45 minutes, are you crazy? But actually holotropic breathing, which is a similar type of actually kind of like the granddaddy of a lot of this stuff, they would do it for 2 to 3 hours. So 45 minutes is not even as much as everybody, freaks out about. But by being in that state for that long, it automatically gets you into that meditative state. And in that state, and this is what's really cool and different about the type that I do, you can actually change the dysfunctional patterns you have in your brain. So much of what we do is based on things we learned in childhood before we were able to really figure stuff out, what was good for us, what wasn't. And at the time, that seemed like it was good for us. But as adults, it's not helping us anymore, but we can't think our way out of it. But this is actually like a body hack, a brain hack on how we can get to that lower level to reprogram, refunction those patterns that are keeping us stuck.
Wow.
That's cool stuff.
That is really interesting. That kind of makes me wonder if it has anything to do with the diaphragm being one of the smooth muscles that we can actually control.
I know, that's actually the coolest thing. So do you realize that only human beings can do that?
Really?
Yeah, we are the only species on this planet who can actually control our breath.
No way. I didn't know that. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Well, in reality, most animals aren't sitting around thinking about everything. They're sitting there analyzing and figuring, most of them are surviving in the moment. This ability to control our breath is actually, something I think we're on this earth to figure out, because it's a way that we can control our state. We actually can become in control of our mental and emotional state by changing our breath using our own free will.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
So this goes a lot deeper than I even thought in the first place.
For sure. Yeah.
Because it's always kind of a laugh, to go up to someone and be like, hey, don't forget you're breathing. And then they're conscious of it. And then they can't really shake it off. And so I didn't realize that was like a human only thing. I mean, it kind of makes sense because we're the ones that are, as far as we know, really sentient. But at the same time, it's a smooth muscle. The rest of our smooth muscles we don't really control. And I know that breathing can affect my heart rate, which, as you said earlier, it tells the body to calm down. So it's almost like breath is the life of the body, quite literally, in a sense.
Well, I mean, think about it. That's how we define our life, right? Our first breath to our last breath. That is our life.
Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. So what is it that makes different types of breath work change different parts of the brain? And by that, I mean the somatic versus the parasympathetic, correct?
Sympathetic versus parasympathetic. Yep, exactly. Well, so it's all about the ratio. So it's about whether the inhale is longer or shorter than the exhale. And the holds count as part of that exhale. So that's where you can shift from one to the other. So it's actually a great trick to use if someone is in front of you and triggering the living crap out of you. One of the best things you can do is start doing a breath pattern. So,
Mm.
I described one on the breath 2, 6, 7, 8, 6 one, but another really popular one is called the box breath, where
Box
you
breath.
basically, it's breathing like a box. So
No,
you
wait,
breathe
what?
in, it's breathing. So you breathe in for 4, then you hold at the top for 4, then you exhale for 4, then you hold at the bottom for 4. So see, it's like a little
Ah.
box, and it's all 4s. So it's because it's
Uh-huh.
4 sides to a box, and you just
Mm-hmm.
keep doing this. Just keep doing this. So while someone is screaming at you, if your in-laws criticizing you, if your kids are acting up, or whatever's happening, by going
Mm-hmm.
into this thing, which they don't even know you're doing, which is a really cool thing, then it keeps you calm. Because
Hmm.
most of the time when somebody's triggering us, it gets us all riled up. We get in that fight or flight state, right? And in
Mm-hmm.
that state, it's quite possible something we don't want to fly out of our mouth is going to fly out of our mouth. And
Mm-hmm.
we may do something that we're going to regret later. But
Mm-hmm.
by purposely, on purpose, moving yourself to the parasympathetic state, just by doing this box breath, that you can do the one that I have on the video, the 4-4-6,
Mm-hmm.
anything, just breathe in and breathe out twice as long. Whatever you do, it'll work to help tell your brain to tell your heart to tell your brain that, hey, it's okay. Then it gets you to the eye of the storm. Then when you
Mm.
respond, you can respond from a place of calm. It also gives you
Ah.
the power of the pause, right? It gives you
Mm-hmm.
the power to pause before responding. Because most of
Yeah.
us don't realize that, you know what? Nobody is due an immediate response from you.
Yeah.
That there is a power in the pause. In fact, the more important the question somebody's asking you, the longer your pause should be. Like, it is
Mm.
okay to take your time and to respond from a place of calm, of in control. And it truly can change your life.
Wow. That, yeah, I mean, that pause moment for sure definitely comes into play in recovery a whole lot. And
Yep, absolutely.
it's one of those things, again, that is so just second nature that it's also not.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing about the breath. It
mm-hmm.
is part of it is just second nature, automatic. We're not thinking about it, but yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
do have control over it too. So
Yeah.
it's all a matter of choice and awareness.
Very interesting, because it does bring about that mindfulness aspect. And
Mhm.
so for some people like myself, I could think myself into that anxiety loop because I was thinking about thinking. But you're saying that your breath work can actually stop, like, just put a nail in that track right there.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
in you're saying double the exhale, twice as long, and that's because it is increasing or decreasing the CO2.
So when we're doing the slower, more changing your state, we're not focusing as much. Well,
Mm-hmm.
although it's still affecting the CO2. I mean, a big thing is actually slowing our breathing and breathing less rapidly and in our chest, taking
Mm-hmm.
deeper breaths into our belly and slower, breathing
Mm-hmm.
less so that we actually reset our CO2 threshold.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
So
which
it's a
is
threshold.
so okay. So here's the science in this one. Okay,
Okay.
so all right. So when you hold your breath, when you have that urge to breathe, what do you think is causing that?
Lack of oxygen.
That's what most people say.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not lack of oxygen. So when you hold your breath, most people as early as 20 seconds will be feeling like, crap, I need to breathe. What the heck? I'm not breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And even the most healthy athletes, usually by 45 seconds, they're wanting to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually check on a pulse ox machine, your oxygen is just fine. It's just dandy. It actually takes around 3 minutes before your oxygen will actually go down. So that's not it.
Wow.
Your oxygen level is A-OK in your blood. It's actually your CO2 level that
Getting too
triggers
high.
that urge to breathe. That sense of air hunger comes from the CO2 level.
Mm.
So because we've been living in this stressful society and we've all been breathing too fast and shallowly in our chest, we
Mm-hmm.
have reset our CO2 to a level that's at the wrong point, where if we just hold our breath for 20 seconds, already we're feeling like, oh crap, I got to breathe. And we don't really. Like it's really, the CO2 girl is actually one of the really makes us anxious and makes us feel we want to breathe. But they're actually, their techniques, the breathe right, breathe light technique, where you're teaching yourself to take low breaths and then cause this little bit of air hunger so you can reset that CO2 set point. Yeah. And it actually, and it's linked to all sorts of diseases by us breathing in this rapid thing. And breathing rapid like this actually triggers the sympathetic, where we're just staying in sympathetic fight or flight all the time, which then causes more anxiety, which then makes us breathe faster. So it's just this circle loop where we're breathing fast and being anxious.
If I'm not mistaken, it's a negative feedback loop in that sense.
Totally. Yep. It's kind of like cigarettes, where so everybody thinks that when they smoke a cigarette, it's making them calm, that's helping their anxiety. What it actually is withdrawal. So nicotine is one of the most addictive substances on the planet. So when you're, it's been a little while since you had the last cigarette, then it's actually causing that anxiety. You're going through withdrawal from the last cigarette. So then when you have the next cigarette, then you feel calm and you think it helped my anxiety, but no, it was really causing it. The lack of the nicotine was actually causing the anxiety that you think it then decreased. So.
Oh, that's interesting, because I've always read that study that it does help decrease anxiety, but it's because they were already addicted to.
Because it's withdrawal.
And it's just getting out of the system that fast. Wow. Okay.
Yep.
And so also with what you were saying about resetting our CO2 threshold, to me, it sounds like we've conditioned ourselves to have this natural, quote unquote, natural breath rate that is keeping us with elevated levels of CO2 or oxygen or even nicotine or everything else in the air. But it's at a level that is kind of like, to me, for some reason, I'm getting the analogy of like putting nitrous oxide in a car, or not nitrous. Is it nitrous oxide? NOS, to make it go super fast. It's like we're keeping our bodies ready to just go. And sometimes we just need to, like you said, take that pause and stuff. And so my question kind of is, after doing breath work for long enough, does a breath pattern become second nature to where that's what you default to?
Yeah, that's the whole goal. So like the breathwork journeys, the breathwork sessions, all these type of stuff. So that's kind of releasing. That's like releasing trapped traumas, unprocessed emotions, all this type of stuff. But if you're not changing how, we're breathing every day, then you're still going to have the anxiety. So it's a matter of all the above. Of releasing the past traumas, but also changing our daily way of relating to life.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you were to stop doing your breath work, you might have a relapse of sorts. Kind of like if alcoholic, such as myself, stops doing the work of recovery, I might have a relapse. Because I stopped doing what changed for the better. So.
Yeah, totally. And breath work is used a lot in addiction. So it's I guess I'll go ahead and say a lot of recovering survivors of addiction consider breath work, they call it a free lapse. So
I've heard that term. I didn't know exactly. I've heard it. I didn't know what they were talking about though.
Yeah. Because in every single, a really important thing is every breathwork journey is different. It's different not only for every person, but each time you do it, each time it's different too. But some people have really amazing experiences when doing these breathwork journeys.
So we know that box pattern, and the one that comes from the video 267678, was that it?
26786.
Dang dyslexia. So, of course, a ton of other breath works and stuff like that, but there's something about breath work that seems universal. It seems like in every culture around the world, whenever we look at the past, they talk about watching your breath.
Yep.
And so it's interesting that it's something that everyone kind of knows. It's like it's in the subconscious consciousness. And it's one of those things that it seems that we're going technology and convenience and society, and we're kind of just going like, and all the things that make us humans and who we are, just kind of like toss it to the side, which is
Yeah.
really interesting. Because you're sitting here, you're kind of doing the exact opposite. You're bringing people from this anxiety and stressful environment, and you're bringing them back to almost nature. I'd say, like, you're helping people find nature in the middle of a city. Like,
Yep. Yep.
that's really
Exactly right.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting you say that too, because grounding is really important. I talk about that too, about,
Yeah.
because that's just it, is we have all these modern things, but we're still, animals in a planet with electrical charges and, things that we had to do in human form.
And that's another thing. It's also become, because technology, a lot of people reverted to the if I can't see it, I don't believe it kind of thing, which this is why I love having doctors on, because y'all do studies, y'all do research, y'all have citation of like all these research articles that you can just sit there and you can start throwing graphs and pie charts out. And it's great because it can make people see that there is something else, because why would someone dedicate a large portion of their life to something that doesn't work?
Yep.
So it's just super amazing that you're doing this kind of thing, because it is going to help the collective consciousness of mankind just
Yep.
take a breath. Literally.
Yep. Exactly. That's what we need to do. Yep.
So what plans do you have for moving your book forward, kind of thing? Because you have this text message video that people can send and just go along with it throughout the day. They have a book. What else do you do to help get people grounded and breathing properly?
Well, I am about to launch a 90-day course
Oh,
on beginning every day with breathwork. And
oh,
that I'm really focused now on a quantum flow mastery. So
oh.
everybody talks about getting in the flow, right? Flow state.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time when they're talking about flow state, they're talking about like athletes, or sometimes you could do it in video games. Like it's this state where you're no longer thinking about me, me, me. You actually are focused on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So my vision, my hope is to teach people like a quantum flow mastery that you can do all the time, where you're kind of
Ah.
in, I mean, technically it's like an alpha brainwave state
Mm.
during your daily life, when we still need to go to the higher brain state, the beta brain state, but to be able to access on will, on command, this creative flow state whenever we want.
Mm.
So,
Does it kind of feel like a little switch in the back of your head whenever you hit that?
right. And you
Okay.
now are just like, you are in alignment. You have got it. Nothing can take you down.
Mm.
It's, you are ready for anything that comes at you. So it's really about, as we talked about being meditation, being in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you can actually use the breath as a hack to get you in that moment.
That
Yeah.
is way too cool.
Yeah.
So are you leading this 90-day course like in person, or is it like a video
So
series,
yeah,
or?
so it's videos, it's audios, and it's live sessions.
Sweet.
Yeah.
That is going to be way too cool. How can people sign up for this? Because I know there's going to be people listening to this that are going to be like, she's got what I need. I want it now.
It's going to be on TheBreathMD.com.
All right. TheBreathMD.com. And when do you start this adventure? Uh,
The course is probably going to be starting December.
December. Ooh,
Yeah.
so some people could have it their New Year's resolution
They
to
could. They could.
have it.
Yeah.
Oh, so
Yeah. In
if you
fact,
want to,
actually, I probably should start it like January 1st. It is probably the best time to start a 90-day course.
yeah, I mean that is a good idea, and we can hype it up until then.
Okay.
Because, I mean, everyone makes New Year's resolutions, right?
Right.
I want to go to the gym. I want to start eating healthier. This, that, or the other, and those kind of things usually require going somewhere, doing something a little bit different, and changing up a routine that might be a little bit too much.
Right.
Because I've always noticed that for myself, whenever I did my step 4, I actually said I have a resentment towards New Year's because nothing ever changed. It was always just back to the normal.
Right.
And in recovery, I learned that it's because you take it one day at a time. You don't sit there and look at the
Exactly right.
whole year. And
Yep.
so now with breath work, you don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to read the labels on packaging of food. You can just sit there and you can be in the middle of traffic in the worst traffic jam ever, and you can practice your breath work.
Exactly
And
right. Yep. You take your breath
so,
wherever you go.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
And if you leave your breath work at home, you don't have to turn around to go get it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yep.
So that is way too cool. And I mean, just this holistic approach is something that I've seen be. It seems like it's actually getting a major foothold whenever it comes to mental health, especially
Yep.
because medications, they have their place. Don't get me wrong,
Yep.
but
Absolutely.
I think it's kind of like what you said at the very beginning. You're tackling the root of it. You're getting
Right.
to where something is going on. You're not saying, "Oh, here's take 2 of these every day, one in the morning, one at night. You'll be fine." And then
Right.
if you've run out of medication, you can't pay for the medication, you're kind of screwed, you're not doing that. You're saying, let's figure out a way for your body to calm down enough so that your mind can take care of the issue. Uh, and uh, this whole holistic approach, like what you're doing, is just, it's refreshing because I wanted to not get help because I was like, I don't want medication. I don't want medication. And had this been around whenever I was really about to fall into it, I think it would have saved my life, to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's part of it. I mean, and I think, that's kind of happening in the medical field is people are just waking up and realizing that what we've been taught to do in medical school and our medical training, which is really just push more pills, which, they definitely can help people. I mean, Prozac saved my life. I was on it for over a decade and, but it truly did. It took me to a new level of existence that I didn't understand existed before. Like it actually helped me to realize that, all people are not evil and out to get me. It was good to realize that. But, after 10 years of being on it, I just felt numb. Like I no longer was in the depths of depression, but I also couldn't feel the joy of life either. And so much of what we're all dealing with is our natural instinct to avoid pain. Like that's a normal survival thing. But by avoiding it, we don't go through it and out and done with it. So, so much of what's going on too is so in the animal kingdom, like if like a gazelle. The gazelle is going through, it's being its little happy self, and then a cheetah comes along, right? And the cheetah grabs the gazelle. So, when we have a stressor, if someone comes into your house with a gun, then we immediately go into fight or flight, right? We get ready, and your body revs up this energy. It's ready to fight, right? But if you don't get to fight, if instead you freeze, which freezing is sometimes very appropriate. Sometimes that's the only thing we can do. That is our survival technique. But if you freeze, you don't discharge all that energy, right? So the gazelle, if it happens to get away after it's frozen, right, it will sit there and shake. That's the normal thing of an animal is after the freeze state, you get rid of that excess energy. But we humans don't do that. We trap it in our body, and then it actually ends up causing disease and pain for years and years to come.
Wow.
And that's why with the breath work, we can actually access it and then let it go. Because, I mean, if you were born on this earth, you have experienced trauma. Just being born is a trauma. So, and most times we don't even know what the traumas were. I mean, it could have happened before we even had known memories. You know, maybe at 3 years old, you went to the dentist and it was a horrible experience, and you're still holding that on in your body because we don't learn how to discharge it.
Yeah. So our minds can say, I'm over it, but our bodies can be sitting there going, I remember.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why I taught therapy. Like I would talk and talk and talk about it, but it just never made it go away. Yeah.
And that's interesting you say that because it seems that dealing with the root issues on the physical level will sit there and completely reduce stress and that underlying anxiety. Because for me, it always felt like someone is out to get me.
Right.
Or that no matter what I was going to do, I was going to be wrong, or the worst case scenario, no matter what. And no matter what I told myself or walked through it, like even if it was like, look at all the other times I was anxious and it turned out just fine.
Right.
But this is the time that it all goes to crap. Like you couldn't tell me otherwise.
Right. Because you can't think your way out of it. It's not going to work.
And so if breathing can access that little gate to say like epiphany, like it's okay.
Yeah, like, that's what it does. Because so many of my addiction patients, they're not using to get high. They're using to get numb. They want to get away from their pain. I mean, they're just trying to do something about that feeling they can't get rid of. But this could do it.
Yep. And speaking from the addiction standpoint, it's a love-hate relationship. I love it because it makes me not feel the way that it's making me feel, and I hate it because the way that it makes me feel afterwards and everything else that goes along with it.
Exactly.
But if breathwork can do so much for the mind and stress and anxiety, what else can breathwork do for the body?
I mean, it can decrease pain. It decreases blood pressure. It increases the immune system. They've actually found that chronic stress is literally killing us. It is linked to 7 leading causes of death, including cardiovascular disease with heart attacks, strokes, lung disease, cirrhosis. It's associated with accidents and I mean, even suicide. I mean, it's all related to chronic stress. And I mean, breath work is the way out. That's a way that we can take back control. So much of us feel like we're just victims to our emotions. We have this emotion come up and we just like feel like we had to wait till it goes away. But no, we don't. We actually have this amazing ability to control our breathing pattern, which then can control our life.
That is way too cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
So whenever it comes to all of that, there was something you said that I wanted to just ask it right away, but you almost answered the question. So now the question is like, it was partially answered and it's not quite. But with this breath work, it decreasing blood pressure and all this other stuff, it can lead to what people think is a problem, but like you said, it's actually treating the root of. And chronic stress, that's what it was. Chronic stress, for some people, they don't think that they're stressing because they say, I'm just hustling, I'm just on the grind, all these other kind of things, but really that is really stressful. Chronic stress.
Yeah, one of the easiest ways to tell is so like fat in the belly, like belly fat, that is directly related to stress.
Really?
Yeah. So that means your cortisol levels are too high. So these people who are hustling or whatever, if they got a little beer belly, then no, they're living in a state of stress.
Oh man, that's interesting to know. So, and I guess if you look at it from that lens, the obesity problem in America could be directly correlated with chronic stress.
It definitely contributes. definitely contribute to it. I mean, our processed food with things that are not actually meant for the
Hmm.
human body has something to do with it too, but
That's a whole nother topic.
that's a whole other topic. Yeah.
um, so what are some of the things that you've seen just completely alleviated from some of the people that uh, go through you for finding new ways to breathe?
I mean, it's really good for phobias. It's really good for
Mm.
anxiety.
Hmm.
It's really, really good for post-traumatic stress as well.
Okay.
It's a way
Okay.
that you can release without having to go there, which actually can
Hmm.
re-traumatize people.
Hmm.
Talking about it, but just instead
Hmm.
just releasing it. But I mean, technically you could do most anything. So once you do the intense breathing and get
Hmm.
into that meditative state, in that state, then you can talk about forgiveness. Then you can talk about,
Hmm.
joy. You can talk about worthiness. You can talk about self-love. You can talk about,
Hmm.
there's so many different aspects that once you're in that state, rewriting the script that we wrote as kids, trying to protect ourselves, but it's not serving us now.
Hmm. And it's really interesting hearing you talk about all this and kind of going through the Rolodex of other guests that I've had talking about neuro stuff, because all of it is interconnected in some way. So
Hmm.
you've got a missing piece of the puzzle, they've got missing pieces,
Yep.
but yours is fundamental, because without yours, the rest of the puzzle just doesn't really have glue of a sorts.
Right.
So, in like we said before, breath is life.
Yep.
So you're sitting here, and again, you're making a way to where people have an access to a meditative state, and they have an issue with going to therapy. Maybe they can't even afford it because it's
Hmm.
expensive.
Hmm.
And now you've made access to where people can help themselves, but they can go through someone that can walk them through, because even though it sounds simple, there's still blocks to it, because it
Yep.
sounds like we've forgotten how to breathe.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't know how to, it's that we've forgotten how to.
Right. Exactly right. Yep.
So,
Yep.
um man, there's just so many other questions that I forgot to like. Oh, there's one. I spoke to someone that was talking about the pH in the blood.
Hmm.
Now you're talking about CO2 levels.
Yep. This
Doesn't that
affects the pH too. Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely does.
So
It can move
so
you into an easier state. It actually helps the red blood cells get the oxygen into the cells,
mhm.
and that's with the nitric oxide and the CO2. So,
Ah,
yeah, this all affects. It's all related. I mean, just like you just said a second ago, it is all related. Yep.
this is way too cool.
Hmm.
And uh so you've been doing this for about 7 years? Was that
Yeah.
right?
Yep. I've been about that long, I think.
That is way too cool. And hopefully you plan to keep going with this, right? Cuz
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm on a mission. I really, my goal is to, get this information out there so that breathwork becomes just a household word. I mean,
nah.
breathwork is really on the rise. Like
Mhm.
they're now describing it as where yoga was 15 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
See, I guess I just live underneath a rock.
No, you're
But
already doing it. You're already doing the work.
well, but you're shedding a whole new light on it. So that's the thing, is that I love to dive down rabbit holes. If I see a rabbit, I will go like, I wonder where this Alice in Wonderland story is going to go. And that's the thing, is that each story has all these other stories that interconnect, and
Mhm.
yours just seems to have one that is probably going to be the most expansive of them all, I'd say, because it deals with the body directly, but on the subconscious level, because it's that
Mhm.
smooth muscle. It's that one that we're not supposed to be able to control.
Mhm.
But for some reason, our brain says, I got it. And
Yep.
and so I was talking whenever I was on a walk earlier this morning. My wife, she said her nose is running, and I said, "Well, put your foot out to trip it, to catch it." And it's kind of like what we're doing with breath work. we're kind of just catching it and saying like, hey, lungs, like diaphragm,
Right.
lungs, just slow down, guys. Like, you don't have to run the whole time.
Right.
And it's just something that I think people's lungs have been telling them for a while that, hey, you need to use me a little bit better. But we haven't really been listening to our body. So what's a way our body kind of tells us we need to work on our breathing a little more? Are there
Well,
any
and that,
signs?
yeah, for sure. Well, just being in the chronic stress, right? So most of us are hanging out in the sympathetic state all the time, which, you know, the sympathetic state, I mean, don't get me wrong, we need it. You know, if there's a bear chasing you, you want to be able to go into the sympathetic state, right?
Yeah.
But the issue is when our body repairs itself, when it restores, that's when it's in the parasympathetic. And if we spend all of our time freaking out in fight or flight, then we're never getting the repair. We're never getting the restore. And that's why we get sick. Yeah.
That's interesting. So it kind of goes in line with our bodies have cycles.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly. Yeah.
So we're sitting there forcing our body out of the regenerative cycle without even knowing it. That is interesting. That would explain why it's easy to fall into chronic stress too. It's not just the lifestyle of the society around us. It's that we're pushing ourselves to...
Well, you know, talking about addiction too, you can be addicted to the stress hormones. You are used to being this chronic whatever. And then, in fact, that's one thing that, so there's a coherent breathing where you breathe in for 5 and out for 5. It's actually, they found the perfect rhythm is 5.5 second inhale, 5.5 second exhale. Puts your heart and your brain in coherence, and it causes this really cool state that, you know, we all want to try to get to. But when I first started doing that, like I lived in stress. Stress was my world. Like, when I would try to do that, where I'd breathe in for 5 and then I would breathe out, I would feel anxious at the end of the exhale because it felt too long. I mean, it felt, I could tell that, no, I have always been in this chronic stress. And that for a lot of people, going into calm doesn't feel right because we have conditioned our mind that we're supposed to always be on, going. And so we never even take the time because we're addicted to being in that state, and it doesn't feel right unless we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I've definitely had that issue where early in recovery, everything's starting to calm down. My life is starting to get better. And I'm just like, when is this going to get like something's not right? Like, and I give it a couple days and it's like everything's still fine, but I'm sitting here going like, no, the shoe's going to drop. I don't know when, but it's coming.
Right.
You know,
right. And part of that is we're conditioned for the dopamine release, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you're coming, you know, getting sober, you're not getting that constant, you know, hit of dopamine. And so then everything, that's what happens with a lot of addicts too. So like life is just too boring. I don't get, you know, nothing's exciting or whatever, but that's just it. Just like we're talking about resetting the breath, you got to reset your brain to find dopamine releases in everyday things instead of, you know,
like waking up and taking that first big breath in the day.
There you go. Yeah.
And so it also kind of goes right back to the whole, you can sit there and tell yourself that everything's fine and that I don't have any reason to worry. And even if you're working on your breath work, you can still have obstacles doing it because it just doesn't feel right. And so that stress hormone, are you saying that that's not just a mental but a physical addiction of a sorts too?
Yes,
maybe
100%. That we have conditioned our body that we don't feel right unless we're getting excess cortisol, you know, epinephrine, we're getting all adrenaline up and all this type of stuff. And if we don't have that going on, we feel like something's wrong because we're so used to that being how we feel. Like some of us just don't, you know, it feels weird to be calm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. So I know with some of my meditations, like you can have certain hand signs or something to help guide your mind to certain directions. And so you have different breath patterns and stuff, kind of like what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
But with all of that, where did that thought just go? I'm sorry. Sometimes I do have bunnies that just, I think they're hedgehogs. They just go, whoop, whoop.
No worries.
Dude. Yep. Nope. That thought's gone. The train has left the station. But with all of this being said, what are some? Oh, that's what it was. So there's certain hand signs and stuff. So with some of the breath patterns or breath works that you do, are there certain things that you do with your body? Because your mind might be telling your brain to do something else, and it's like there should be a way that your body can tell your brain that it's okay without, you know what I'm trying to get at, right?
Yeah, for sure. And actually, that's really something too that I'm wanting to develop too, which is a course on breathing and movement. So, and they do that a lot. I mean, you do that with yoga, you do that with qigong, but there are lots of the movement with the breath, and then integrating the body, really getting into the body, and then grounding too. So, that's definitely things on the horizon that I plan to be educating about as well. Yep.
Sweet. So you'll have another 90-day course on that then.
I will. Yep.
Sweet. So can you remind us again where we can find your course once you get it up and going?
It's going to be at TheBreathMD.com. And then you can also go there to the website to get my new book. It's called Breath, The Remote Control to Inner Calm.
Ooh, I like that.
And since like over 80% of people are visual, I have lots of pictures in here too.
It has pictures.
Yep, lots of pictures. Yep.
That is way too cool. I know I'm going to have to order myself a book, and anyone else that is listening and or watching, because this is on YouTube too, y'all better get this book because it's going to change your life. Because trust me, breathwork, it does wonders. So if you don't believe me, listen to someone that's like got a doctorates in it, for crying out loud. Because it's just so it's hard telling people like this stuff works. It's just you got to give it a chance.
Yeah.
And it's also more of a process, not a pill. So it's going to take a little bit of time. Exactly. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. So. Well, and one thing too, and this is on the little bitty video at the Breath 26786, which is you have to do it at least 90 seconds. People are like 90 seconds, and 90 seconds is longer than you think. So if you need to get out a stopwatch to make sure you actually did it for 90 seconds, you should do that because, sometimes it can take 5 minutes. But, the 5 minutes are going to go by, whether you're doing this, doing a box breath or doing a 4-4-6 or whatever. The 5 minutes will go by either way. Wouldn't it be nice to just do the breathing during those 5 minutes, and you'll be much less anxious, much less stressed at the end of those 5 minutes?
Yeah, and I do want to retract what I said, how everyone's looking for that faster kind of thing. Well, with the holistic stuff, it looks like breathwork is the way to go because you can access it whenever, wherever. Yeah. And that's what's wonderful about it. So for some reason, it just seems like what you're developing, what you are exploring and researching is just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to be at a point to where people are going to, like yogis are going to be like, hey, do you got a good idea for a new breath technique? I'm trying to get to the third chakra.
Indeed. Yep. Yeah.
So here on Retrieving Sanity, I do like to get guests on a couple of times so we can catch up in a few months, see what's changed in your world, what you figured out. We can see how breathwork has affected me with some of the things that I'll read from your book. And so I would like to have you back on. Can we see? Yeah. Yeah. What should we talk about next time? I mean, it's going to be breathwork, but do we want to get specific about anything in particular?
Well, so in a few months, my 90-day course will be out. And so we actually can talk about like quantum flow. How do you use the breath Quantum Flow Mastery is going to be the name of my course.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Quantum Flow Mastery. It just sounds so Marvel-esque. I love it.
I know it does, isn't it?
But we will, let's see. We're at the 55-minute mark, so after editing a little bit of stuff, we got just a few minutes. You got any shout outs you want to do for yourself or any loved ones and all that?
For sure. I'm very grateful to my amazing husband who is so incredibly supportive, Chad. So he's Chad May, and a lot of my medical stuff is under Leslie. So, but I have added the May as we have recently gotten married. And
congratulations.
Yeah, he's the love of my life. It's fantastic. Yeah, he's very awesome. Good. And to my kids and to my mom, who's always been very supportive too. So it's good stuff. My dad.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad that you have such a great support network, and you've got Retrieving Sanity behind you as well. So,
aw, thank you. This has been a really fun interview too. Thank you.
Oh, well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it because I enjoy it. I like having candid conversations because, bullet point little interviews. It's like I going to school like for a test. Like, woo. I like to have fun. It's something that I love to see the passion in people's eyes whenever they talk about what they do and how it helps them, and especially how it helps others, because I've not really talked to someone that's been like, oh, I did it all for me and this is blah, blah, blah. Like, I've talked to people that have gone through their story of addiction, but that's their personal story. Everyone else is like, nope, I'm doing this because I'm trying to help people. And that is the world I want to be in. Mm-hmm. So I love this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you're a part of it. So
yeah, good stuff.
But we'll go ahead and end this episode here. I'll stop the recording. And until then, thank you for listening on WDJY FM. This has been Keegan on Retrieving Sanity with a very special guest, Dr. Jeannie May. So we will catch y'all with Dr. Jeannie May next time. I'm not sure exactly when, but check us out at retrievingsanity.com or on Facebook, and you should be able to find updates on Facebook at least. So with that being said, y'all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see y'all next week. Shalom.